I think what really pushed Apple, because I talked about this a few weeks ago, I think they had that article, you probably saw it, where Amazon was committing to, making what, like a dozen perhaps theatrical releases a year starting in 26. I mean, so Amazon is like, we're going to make a lot of original content. We're going to slap the money down to fund it, and we're going to make a push into theatrical with it.
Renegade Online.
Hey, yeah, actually, I've been trying to hear from one of my dudes over at WB to find out what was going on with the home video side of it, because that's been like the number one question I've been getting asked since this movie come out, is if it's coming to video. Because as you guys mostly know, Apple not even that long ago said that none of our movies are coming to home video, right? Well, then all of a sudden you've got this movie where they're actually doing theatrical, because they've also said they're not going to do theater in the past too,
right?
Famously with Wolves and other things like that they had the big deal with. Okay, so yes, this is coming to home video at some point. I don't have a date yet, but yes, Warner Brothers picked up theatrical and home video distribution from Apple. Apple bought this for about $140 million, I'm assuming, from Bruckheimer Films. So it's basically like a Bruckheimer film negative pickup deal kind of thing, where Bruckheimer made the movie, Apple picked it up, then Warner Brothers is distributing it otherwise, so they'll get to keep the theatrical and home video side of things. Apple keeps the SVOD and Apple TV side of things. So they'll have the paper or video, whatever you call it, SV, where it's you buy it on like Fandango,
so
Voodoo,
TV.
whatever.
Yeah,
all that kind of stuff. If you buy it, So I don't have a window on the date on this yet. So you're right; they could keep this in theaters for about 60,
I don't
90
think they
days.
have a window. This is like, okay, so Apple's progression over the last couple of years. So I had a window, basically, I had a comparison set up between Killers of the Flower Moon and F1 and Napoleon, right? Because the Napoleon and the other one, those were the ones that were, right? They took those, they gave Martin Scorsese money, right? And they gave Ridley Scott money, a lot of money. And then Apple owned it. They put it in theaters, but I don't remember if they ever put those on physical.
No, not inside the U.S. Now, Flower Moon got a release outside of the U.S. because I guess Scorsese has certain rights where he was able to do that. But I think they even asked him directly if it was going to ever be available in the U.S. and he said something like no because of the deal, that he had.
Apple, F1 was another one of those where. I mean, Apple, when I said it's Apple movie, right? It doesn't mean like Apple went out and said, we have an idea, let's make this movie. Let's go find somebody to do it. But that's like Apple started that during COVID. Do you remember the Tom Hanks movie Greyhound? That was the first big one they did. So Greyhound was the Tom Hanks World War II movie, which if y'all haven't seen it, it's still on Apple TV. I wish you could buy it on physical, but you can't. Because Apple bought it, $90 million.
Might be the future.
Yeah. And they put it on Apple TV Plus, which I had at the time. And I watched it. It's a great movie. It's Tom Hanks is the captain of a frigate or a destroyer or something. I can't remember. It's been 5 years since I watched. Came out, like I said, like during COVID. Came out as another Tom Hanks World War II action movie, and he was the captain of the Greyhound, and it was that story. And I think it was in the Pacific Theater, if memory serves. But that was the first big play. Apple spent $90 million to acquire that because they couldn't put it in theaters. They wanted to do something with it, and Apple was like, we have lots of money. We'll take it. So that's how kind of it started. And now, like I said, F1 is like the latest. And they keep getting better is my point. Killers of the Flower Moon didn't do great in theaters, but it wasn't a big action movie. Napoleon is not a big action movie, but this one is like, so I'm saying Apple's probably really happy with this because like, wait a minute, 300 million in 2 weeks. Wow.
Well, my understanding is they're not getting any of this money. Right, like that's kind of what I was getting at but what they're getting out of this is free advertising. No, my understanding is that Warner Brothers, they might have a small percentage of it, but that was what I was trying to explain to you. Is my understanding is they bought the initial rights because there was a bidding war for this.
Warner Brothers has the distribution contract, so they're getting a distribution fee takedown.
Probably, but as far as my understanding is they have the theatrical distribution and the home video rights, and Apple just retained, the word retained was used, the SVOD and pay-per-view rights, basically. So, and streaming rights.
It might.
So I'm not sure how much they're actually getting from the theatrical, but it doesn't matter. My point was that regardless, is they're probably seeing it as free advertising anyway, because that's the thing, is this is going to probably be one of the biggest things that Apple will have once it premieres on Apple TV, even though
Oh,
they
yeah.
have never really used it. But I think that the studios should be paying attention to this, because this is the way they should be doing this shit. If anything, they should shut down all their streaming services, or just turn them into, like, you know, the streaming services for their television side of things, and making these deals with Apple, Amazon, and Netflix for the future to say, yes, we've got theatrical distribution, and then once it hits video, you guys have it for streaming, boom, and then half of the movie is paid for, right? Like, because in this case, it sounds like Apple pretty much foot the bill, and then I don't know how much Warner Brothers kicked in. See, that's what I'm saying. I know they paid half of certain things, but yeah.
Warner Brothers. Okay, so in the normal world, how this would have worked with these two, and there may have been something else at play, but Apple. This was Jerry Bruckheimer and Joe Kosinski in 24 in an interview that they did. They made it abundantly clear this was Apple money. They were playing with Apple money on this one. And they had struck the deal, you know, with Apple, as, you know, this was part of Apple Studios, just like Netflix Studios. There's no real studio at Apple. There's no real studio at Netflix. It's just that they call it, and they hire a third party to come in and do all the stuff. So this was definitely an Apple Studios film. They linked up with, and because I think I said this last week or the week before it opened, I said, isn't it funny that Apple didn't go down the street to their buddy Bob Iger at Disney, right? Apple and Disney supposed to have a long, happy, joy relationship. No, they went over, and David Zaslav struck the deal with Apple to start, hey, we want it. We'll take it. And they got the distribution partnership. So in theory, Warner Brothers' money in the game would have been as distributor. Their job was going to be to pay for the
okay, because yeah, I'm looking at this now. This was already shot before Apple got involved, because I'm looking at the article here from last year where they got the deal made.
It was I think it was, I don't think it was finished. It was still in production.
Well, they got images and everything here. Like, it's done. Like it was almost done, or it was in the production, in the midst of production.
That's what I'm saying. It was underway. I don't remember how far along it was, is my point.
And there was above the line compensation besides the 140. So I don't know how much they paid besides that.
And I don't know if we'll ever know, but it's probably going to wind up being something similar to what we've seen before.
Because it was a Bruckheimer Plan B production, which is Plan B is Brad Pitt's company.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So yeah,
it probably wound up being something similar to like what we saw, where we were laughing and saying, no, Killers of the Flower Moon didn't cost $200 million. That's ridiculous. No, it cost probably less than half of that, but that's what Apple paid to get.
My guess is Apple paid about 200. Yeah.
Yeah. The rights in perpetuity. Yeah. I think the interview was, hey, we heard this movie cost $300 million. Bruckheimer and Kosinski laughed and like,
no,
this is Apple's money. So we can't, but you're off by many tens of millions of dollars is what they said.
Right. Cause like I'm starting to see that the average of this is these producers, these production companies, whether it's a Skydance, whether it's whoever that's involved, Legendary, a lot of them are taking like half of the money up front as like just the cost of doing business with them.
Yeah.
And that's why these movies are so fucking expensive. Besides the other stuff that we talk about, right? Like the below the line stuff, like all the stuff the unions require. Right. Yeah, the other side of it, where these production companies are literally pocketing half of this money. And we've seen this otherwise with like the Amazon and a couple other productions too.
Especially if they're being paid for by streamers, because look, Netflix set the bar there. And the bar, and because Netflix has talked about this for years. They've made no bones about it. Now we're just seeing the other guys, oh, well, Netflix is doing it. Let's do what Netflix does. They're making a ton of money. And that is, you know, remember, Netflix is the company or the streamer that fought all of we're not paying residuals. We're not, because this is not how we can't run a business model this way, because there's no way to predict, you know, just based on somebody turns this on 5 months from now or something. This is not the same as us licensing it to a television station or putting it out another physical media release from the vault or whatever. So Netflix wanted to do and was very strict about, we want to pay one time up front, and then it's ours, and it's going to stay here. Okay. So you got Apple and Amazon and all these other guys now are doing the same thing. They're going to overpay for it because they don't want to have to fight. We get the rights in perpetuity. But for some of these guys, these bigger names out there, like the Bruckheimers, like the Martin Scorseses and the Ridley Scotts, right? These guys are like, well, look, I don't want to just make a streaming film. My movies go to theaters. So you're getting places like Apple now that are, okay, you know, let's talk about this. And I think what really pushed Apple, because I talked about this a few weeks ago, I think they had that article, you probably saw it, where Amazon was committing to, making what, like a dozen perhaps theatrical releases a year starting in 26 or 27. I mean, so Amazon is like, we're going to make a lot of original content. We're going to slap the money down to fund it. And we're going to make a push into theatrical with it. I mean, it might be limited. It might be, 30 days or something. I don't know what they're planning on doing. And maybe they'll vary it depending on the scale of the film. But I think Apple is seeing this. But at the time Apple started doing this, at the time all these people started doing this 4 or 5 years ago, remember, we're still in the middle of COVID. Everybody's home. Nobody's at the theater. The streaming stuff was going through the ceiling. So everybody's thinking, oh, no, we don't need to do theater. Let's go right here to the streaming service. Well, they're figuring out now that no, there's still definitely room to make a lot of money at the box office. If we put it out there, it's a really good film and it's something that people want to go see on a big screen. We're going to do it. I think F1's a really perfect example of that.
Make sure you're subscribed to Valiant Renegade and join us every Sunday at 6 p.m. Eastern for the live show.